Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. I always believed I was a good man, an honest man. I provided for my family, kept my promises, and upheld my responsibilities. For 7 years, I worked tirelessly to build a life with my wife, Jessica, that looked as perfect as a postcard. We had a home in the suburbs, 2 kids who kept us busy, and a level of success most would envy. We had it all, or so I thought. Then came the day I found the phone bill. I was going through the usual routine, sorting through paperwork on the kitchen counter while Jessica was out, the kids were at school, and the house sat in an eerie silence. I wasn't searching for anything in particular, at least, not at first. But then I saw it, tucked beneath a stack of other bills, her phone statement. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Jessica had always been meticulous with our finances. But when my eyes landed on the numbers printed in bold, numbers I didn't recognize, I did what anyone would do. I checked them. What I uncovered set the stage for a nightmare I never could have imagined. At first, I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a misdial, an error in the records. But the more I looked, the less sense it made. The calls weren't long, just brief exchanges, but they were frequent. Every few hours, late at night, early in the morning, my pulse pounded in my ears as I cross-referenced the numbers through a lookup service. Some were private, others unlisted, but one number appeared again and again. Darren's. Darren, my business partner. My friend. The realization struck like a gut punch. My wife and my best friend were having an affair. At first, I didn't know how to react. I trembled with anger and hurt, but not just for the obvious reasons. It wasn't only the affair that shattered me, it was the deception, the lies, the manipulation. How could Jessica look me in the eye every day, smile at me, and pretend nothing was wrong? How could Darren, whom I had trusted with my business, my livelihood, betray me so completely? But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was knowing that the game wasn't over. I wasn't about to let them walk away unscathed. I had to be strategic, methodical. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't weep. No, what I would do was make them suffer in ways they couldn't begin to imagine. So I started planning. I had always been good at reading people, at understanding situations, and, more importantly, at manipulating them. Darren and I ran a growing tech firm together. He was the public face of the company, the one people admired and trusted. But behind closed doors, he was someone I could control. And Jessica, she was my wife. I knew her better than she knew herself. She wasn't nearly as clever as she liked to believe. I wasn't going to confront them directly. No, that would be far too easy. Instead, I was going to make them feel the weight of their betrayal in ways they never saw coming. I started small, planting subtle seeds of doubt between them. I made sure Darren noticed how distant Jessica had become. He would text her constantly, but her responses grew curt, disinterested. Casually, I would mention overhearing her talk about how busy she was, how exhausted she felt, too tired to engage. I knew this would gnaw at him. Jessica, on the other hand, I played like a puppet. I became the perfect husband, showering her with affection, complimenting her endlessly, saying all the things I knew would make her feel guilty. I never confronted her, not yet. I wanted her to believe she still had a chance, that I was still the man who loved her unconditionally. It was all an act, a slow, calculated burn of emotional manipulation. Meanwhile, I set the stage for the ultimate betrayal. I purchased a series of elegant abstract paintings, sophisticated, one-of-a-kind pieces. Through a well-known art dealer, I arranged for them to be displayed in my office. They were stunning, captivating. But what no one knew, not even the dealer, was that I had laced the canvases with a potent, undetectable toxin, a substance that seeped into the skin upon contact, slowly breaking down the body over time. Darren had no idea what awaited him. Everything was falling into place. I kept up the charade with Jessica, letting her think I was blissfully unaware. But I saw the cracks forming. She was unraveling, torn between guilt and the affair. Her confidence wavered. And Darren, he was getting sick. At first, it was subtle. A headache here, a strange rash there. But soon, the symptoms worsened. His hands trembled. His skin paled. He was deteriorating, and he had no idea why. Jessica, too, was beginning to buckle under the pressure. Her nerves were frayed. She snapped at me for no reason, then immediately apologized, as if desperate for my forgiveness. But I wasn't going to let her off that easily. Then came the night I had been waiting for. Under the guise of celebrating a successful business deal, I invited them both to dinner at my home. It was an evening of quiet elegance, fine china, candlelight, expensive wine. Everything was carefully arranged to make them feel at ease, to lull them into a false sense of security. As the night wore on, I watched the unease creep in. Darren was sweating profusely, his body on the verge of collapse. Jessica kept stealing worried glances at him, concern flickering in her eyes. But beneath it, I saw something deeper. Guilt. She knew she couldn't keep pretending. At the perfect moment, I stood up and excused myself. When I returned, I carried a folder in my hands. I laid it on the table. Inside was everything: screenshots of their messages, photographs of their secret meetings, undeniable proof of their betrayal. And at the very top, the final blow, a letter I had forged, written in the hand of Darren's wife, accusing him of something far worse. They stared at the evidence in stunned silence. Shock, guilt, and something else. Fear. This was the moment I had meticulously planned for weeks, and I wasn't about to let it slip away. Darren, trembling, tried to deny it. You don't understand, she's not what you think, he stammered. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Jessica, her face ashen, looked up at me, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. It was just one mistake. I met her gaze, cold and unyielding. One mistake? Or a series of them, each one more deliberate than the last. But I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I turned to Darren. You think you're a clever man, don't you? I said, my voice laced with contempt. But you're not. You're just a coward. His breathing grew labored, his hands trembling as he struggled to stand. Please, he begged. I'll fix this. Just let me fix it. But there was no fixing this. He had to pay. I rose from my seat and walked to the painting in the corner of the room, lifting it off the wall. The toxin had already begun its work. His skin was deteriorating, blisters forming beneath his sleeves. I don't want you to die, Darren, I murmured, my voice eerily calm. I want you to suffer. I want you to feel the weight of your betrayal, every single day, for the rest of your life. I took a step toward him. That's when his body gave out. He collapsed, convulsing violently, blood trickling from his nose and mouth. I turned to Jessica. She had fallen to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. She couldn't even speak. She knew what was coming next. You'll be next, I whispered, my voice barely audible. But I'll let you live with the guilt. I'll let you wake up every day knowing what you did. I'll let you suffer slowly, in ways you can't even fathom. As I walked out of the room, I glanced back one last time. Darren was gone. Jessica was left with nothing but the unbearable weight of her actions. But I wasn't done yet. When you betray me, punishment isn't enough. I don't just make you pay, I break you. And Jessica was about to find out just how cruel I could be. I left the house that night feeling a calm I hadn't known in years. The deed was done. Darren was gone. Jessica was drowning in the wreckage of her own choices. But the game was only half played. I let a few days pass, giving her just enough time to stew in guilt and confusion. I watched as she unraveled, withdrawing from the world, unable to cope with what I had done to her. What I hadn't expected, though, was just how desperate she would become. Jessica showed up at my office unannounced. Even before she spoke, I saw it in her eyes, the sheer desperation. She wore an expression I hadn't seen in years, the one she used when she needed something from me. It was a feigned vulnerability, but I knew better. She entered without knocking, standing hesitantly in the doorway, her hands trembling as she struggled to find the right words. I didn't look up from my desk right away. I made her wait. She hated that. Mitchell, please, she finally said, her voice raw and strained, as if she were fighting back tears. I can't do this anymore. I need you to forgive me, Jessica pleaded, her voice fragile and desperate. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't think it would turn out like this. I didn't think. I finally looked up, meeting her gaze with an icy stare. A calmness settled over me, sharper than any anger I had felt before. You didn't think it would end up like this? That's your excuse now? I asked, my voice steady, controlled. You didn't think about what you were doing when you climbed into his bed? You didn't think about what you were doing when you lied to my face, over and over again? She flinched at the venom in my words, knowing she deserved every single one. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her own guilt. I'll do anything, Mitchell. Please, just don't keep punishing me like this. I can't. She broke off, choking on her own desperation. You can't what? I leaned back in my chair, watching her intently. Can't live with the consequences of your actions? That's what you've been doing these past few days, isn't it? Hiding in that house, hoping the world will forgive you? Jessica trembled, her eyes darting nervously around the office. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. You did this, Jessica. You threw everything away. And now you think you can just walk back into my life and ask for forgiveness? I stood, walking toward her slowly. There's nothing left for you here, I said, my tone devoid of warmth. Not anymore. Her breath hitched, her face contorting in shock. Please, Mitchell, don't do this. I don't want to lose you. I've lost everything else. I'll leave, I swear. Just, please forgive me. It was almost laughable. She really thought she could just beg her way out of this, manipulate me into submission again. You lost everything the moment you let Darren into our lives, I said coldly. And now I'm going to take something from you. Jessica's face drained of color as she instinctively stepped back. You'll never forget what you've done, I continued, my voice razor sharp. And when you think it's over, I'll be there to remind you. Horror flashed across her face as I reached the office door and turned the lock. Her pleading fell into stunned silence as I strode past her toward the small painting hanging in the corner, the one laced with the toxin. I had already decided how her punishment would unfold. The toxin wouldn't kill her, not right away, but it would make her feel the weight of her betrayal. Slowly, relentlessly. You've been poisoned, Jessica, I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to me, confusion etched across her face. What are you talking about? You're already sick, I replied, my voice soft but heavy with malice. It's only a matter of time before you realize how much you've lost, how much you've destroyed. Jessica's breath quickened as realization flickered across her features. She was beginning to understand. This was her punishment. Not just the betrayal, but the slow, suffocating decline that would strip her of everything she once held dear. I saw her trying to hold it together, but it was useless. She was about to lose it all, her beauty, her health, her sanity. And the thing she thought she could salvage by coming here, by begging for my mercy, that was already gone. I walked out of the room, leaving her alone in that sterile office, the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. This was her punishment. But it wasn't just about the toxin. The true torment was in the knowing. The certainty that every moment from now on would be consumed by the awareness of her betrayal. That, in itself, was its own kind of death. But Jessica wasn't the only one who had to face the consequences. There was still the matter of Darren. His lifeless body crumpled in my living room, blood seeping from his mouth, his skin peeling away. His death had left a trail of questions, and soon, people would start looking for answers. The police would investigate. They would follow the evidence. They would uncover the poisoning. I couldn't allow that to happen. I had to cover my tracks, erase every last trace of what I had done. This was never just about punishing them. It was about protecting myself. And so, I set to work, carefully orchestrating a series of events designed to mislead the investigation, obscure the truth, and bury any connection to me. It wasn't enough to destroy their lives. I had to ensure I remained untouchable. It took weeks, but I made it happen. In the end, the police ruled Darren's death a freak allergic reaction, an unfortunate accident caused by an unidentified environmental factor. The toxins I had used were untraceable in the form I had applied. There was no suspicion of foul play. As for Jessica, she withered. She didn't die, but she no longer lived, either. Every day, she felt her body failing her, each symptom a reminder of what she had done. She couldn't escape the thoughts, the guilt, the unrelenting weight of regret. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that this was her fault. She lived under the curse I had placed upon her. But it wasn't just the sickness that consumed her. It was the slow, agonizing erosion of her spirit. The endless, torturous remorse ate away at her, stripping her of everything until she was nothing more than a hollow shell of the woman I had once loved. And that was my revenge. Not a quick, merciful end, but a slow, merciless decay. She would never know peace again. As for me, I walked away, a man who had been wronged, a man who had turned pain into art. And now, when I think of them, I realize something. This was never just about revenge. It was about power. The power to make someone feel the weight of their actions long after they thought they were safe. And that power, it was mine to wield. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.